Okay, everybody, what's going on? What's up? Welcome back to the Mama Saga. This is where your Marvel loving mama is a mother by day and an attorney by day, but also I break down, Marvel and Studios and Disney Plus, comic books, Disney Plus series, and of course, Marvel movies. I do that by day and by night. So it's my 15th anniversary, my 15th wedding anniversary. And here I am at whatever o'clock in the morning doing my live stream really quick with my reactions and my notes with respect to She-Hulk Attorney at Law episode 2. So I'm going to try to bust this out pretty quickly, but I know I'm going to have a bunch of edited videos as well that will come out during the week. We are out for our anniversary, staying overnight somewhere. And so I'm in the hotel lobby where there's no music, so I won't get a content strike, just to do this for y'all on my 15th wedding anniversary. So if this isn't dedication, I don't know what is. Okay, so let me put on my glasses to read my notes. I did not get an advance copy. I had to see this with the rest of y'all, so I didn't have anything prepared until after I had an opportunity to watch episode 2. So I'm going to try and keep the glare as low as possible. So for my 15th anniversary, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the Mama Saga. I already have the She-Hulk playlist with pre-edited videos and my reactions to last week's first episode. So you can check that out. I did a ton of videos on Miss Marvel and upcoming projects. And here we go. So, episode 2 is called Superhuman Law. Okay, so I'm reading this off my phone because I'm not on my desktop where I can switch all over the place between my laptop and my desktop there. So, we open up this episode with a news show covering a developing story about what happened in the courtroom between She-Hulk and Titania. So that was towards the end of episode 1 last week. So the channel is KPVK15 Action News. I'm definitely going to do some research after I'm done with this live to see if the various news stations have contained within the names any Easter eggs. That I don't know right now because I just finished watching to jump on and be with y'all. So let's see. But the lower third on the news caster screen there says super influencer causes panic and Titania in custody after courtroom brawl. So the public already knows Titania, and if you've read any of the articles that are out there covering the MCU version of Titania, you can definitely see that she's a well-established influencer in the MCU. She was superhuman that the public recognized before She-Hulk, and I believe they're projecting that a couple episodes in, she's going to play out as the major enemy for She-Hulk, just like in the Marvel comic book saga. However, here she's going to hate her for a different reason. It's because She-Hulk's going to start stealing all of Titania's thunder. So, she's referred to as a super influencer who has caused panic after fleeing traffic court, of all things. So I told you I'm an attorney. Any of the regular subscribers know that I am. So I'll start off. I have a couple of really good attorney reactions to what went on in episode 2. And I definitely will have some pre-edited videos that'll cover some of this stuff in more depth. But I will say off the bat, if you've never been to a courthouse in America, especially like a Supreme or in New York State, Supreme Court level is the county court level. In California, I believe they call it Superior. I'm only admitted in New York. I'm not admitted everywhere, folks. But it's not unusual for really, really big courthouses, depending upon the county and a variety of factors. You can have multiple different types of like courthouses housed under one main roof. So you could have matrimonial court and family court in the same courthouse building as criminal court and other civil matters. So apparently, Titania freaked out because she was in traffic court, got mad, and busted through the next wall, having a tantrum. And that's when she came upon She Hulk, who had her case with GLK&H, or Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. I did put out an episode just in the last couple of days saying that I think the major client that they're representing is, because this is kind of true for a period of time in the Marvel comic book saga anyway, I do believe that they were representing Roxxon and that she had a case against Roxxon. They had products that caused death. It could be negligent homicide, right? So that's why she's working for the DA's office, okay? So, but you have traffic court in the same building, which again is not entirely unusual. And Titania apparently flipped out and broke into the next courtroom and having a tantrum. A male newscaster shows up in the next scene. There's courtroom drawings that are acknowledged to be courtesy of the Metropolitan District Court, which is where they were. The main lower third says courtroom catastrophe. And the headline reads, Titania's lawyers say entire incident was an unfortunate misunderstanding and the result of an extreme case of low blood sugar. Well, if this isn't good lawyering, like, it's kind of like the Twinkie defense from years ago. Like, you can't blame Titania. She had low blood sugar. She was getting bad news in traffic court. And so she flipped out because she's a superhuman with super strength. So go ahead and forgive her, public. She is an influencer that you apparently love anyway. The new superhero who saved the day is, in fact, identified as Deputy District Attorney Jennifer Walters. And the lower third also says members of the jury call the Green Woman a hero who saved their lives, which she very well may have done. I don't know if Titania was looking to hurt anybody. Given what they are talking about here in the lower thirds of the various news coverage, it might just seem like Titania was having a tantrum and just blasted through a wall, and she really wasn't thinking. So then they go live to an eyewitness who, if you've seen many of the She-Hulk trailers leading up to this second episode, you quickly notice it's one of the guys that she sees on like that Tinder ripoff app, dating app that's going to come into play later, which is absolutely awesome. So the lower third reads, eyewitness recounts terrifying moment in courtroom. He didn't seem particularly terrified, but whatever. The news often likes to whip things up to a bigger frenzy to get and keep your attention, which is part of their business. So the eyewitness is just very calm, very casual. He says, the chick, pretty decent, turned into a Hulk, like a chick Hulk. And that's so funny. So the reporter this time, it's what KZYO12 says, a She-Hulk, right? So he rephrases what the witness is saying. And the witness is like, She-Hulk? Exactly. So at this point, the public has given She-Hulk her name, just like Bruce Banner said is often the case when they're talking about the Smart Hulk moniker or name that he'd ended up adopting after the public gave it to him. He and his cousin discussed this back in episode 1 when they were talking in his beachfront lab there. So next, the scene cuts to Legal Ease Bar and Grill, which as a lawyer, I think is a fun player on words. Nikki, Jennifer's paralegal, and Jennifer are going to the bar. The doors open and you hear people chanting because they know that Jennifer's coming. She-Hulk, She-Hulk. And Nikki's all, that's for you. And she opens the door. And Jennifer's still rejecting this superhero persona. She's not digging it. She doesn't care for it. And she doesn't want special treatment for it. So she's like, no. But Nikki's like, give the people what they want, make them happy. Don't be such a killjoy. So Jennifer is in human form as she contemplates what to do as she's standing outside the bar. But she's, she relents and she walks in the She-Hulk form. And everybody's really happy. They're cheering her on. She's kind of looking pleased. Nikki gets her a drink, but then she's like saying to Nikki, the name better not stick. It's dumb. She also points out that she's ticked off that it's a derivative of the Hulk. It's a derivative of her cousin's superhero nickname, and she kind of really wishes she could stand out on her own if she's going to have a name, which is, I guess, entirely fair if you think about it from her perspective. But Nikki's like, whatever, Hulk is a dumb name too. Just like let it roll off you, you know? So Dennis, the nasty male mansplaining attorney from episode one, shows up and he's like, he can't even compliment her. Dennis is so nasty. He was riding her coattails in episode one. Like, you did all this work. I'll take the case over. Now he's giving her a hard time, saying, neat little trick you pulled there, Walters. He accuses her of having superpowers in the courtroom just to drum up publicity for herself. Now, keep in mind, they're working for the district attorney's office. I was always a civil litigator. I never did criminal work, but I have friends who did on both sides of the equation. And I will tell you that whether you are working for the private sector in terms of criminal law or not, if you're working for the district attorney's office, it's still kind of the same game. You drum up a big name for yourself, you get clientele. So if you show up in the news, you definitely get clientele who want to hire you. You not only raise your profile, you raise your employer's profile. And of course, your employer might give you more plum assignments, and it's better job security for you. When I was an attorney doing civil work, again, not criminal, I did work for 4 years for Rockefeller Center, and then at another firm for almost 2 years for the Arizona beverage brand. And believe me, that raises your profile when you do work. Hey, Showmonger, what's going on? Never liked the name. I know. She never liked that name, but the public named her, and Bruce was kind of like tenderizing her or softening her up in episode one for what ultimately happens in episode two. And, you could say, oh, it's a feminist warrior or not. I'm not saying you would say that, Chillmonger. I'm just using the ubiquitous you. But, she wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. So Dennis is like all nasty because he's constantly jockeying for position. He's constantly trying to chip away at her, which I'm not saying all men did to me. I'm not going to sit there and cry, oh, glass ceiling, when I was more actively an attorney. I still have my license to practice. I'm self-employed. I work out of my home and I do virtual work now. But for 17 and a half years, I was out in the game. And I'll tell you, you could have male or female attorneys constantly jockeying for position and constantly busting on you. You do something with your client and you're high profile. They don't like it, especially if it reflects well on you. We learn in this episode that, yes, initially Jen won the case, but for those that haven't seen it yet, I should have said spoilers before I started. Oh dear. Spoilers galore. It's my 15th wedding anniversary, by the way, Chillmonger, and here I am in a hotel doing this. Can you believe it? Come on. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up, everybody. Keep in mind, I'm not in my typical office today, and everything is not ideal. And I had to go hide in the hallways so the music wasn't playing and I didn't get a content strike. So it's totally from hunger today. Chillmonger says 15 thumbs. Yes. And make sure you check out Chillmonger. He's got a really great comic book and Marvel themed channel too. He does these really great live stream breakdowns himself. So I can't shout him out enough. Okay, so here we go. So Dennis is just accusing her. When he's not riding her coattails, he's stabbing her in the back. And Jennifer won't discuss with him. He's curious, but she won't tell him how she got her superpowers. And so, of course, he sourly has to conclude nepotism, knew it, because, the Hulk, She-Hulk, they're cousins. He might have known her at work, and she might have made mention of the fact at work that the Hulk was her cousin. As this episode plays out, it's very clear that her family has long ago and far away accepted Bruce as a superhuman and, have adjusted to the fact that there's a superhuman in their family. So I'm sure they've all gone and told their friends and stuff, especially after the Battle of Earth, when it was really cool to be an Avenger, which of course Hulk was at the time. I guess technically still is. How did you like what happened at the ending there, Chill, right? Come on. The whole Sakaar thing, they're playing that a whole lot harder, a whole lot faster than I thought they were gonna. Oh my God. Okay, so Nikki's bringing back free drinks to the She-Hulk. She's getting all sorts of social perks already, but she doesn't really care for it. I mean, she takes the drink, but she's just like, I'm not a superhero. I did not go to law school and rack up six figures in student loans just to become a vigilante. And here's the thing, like, I hear her, I totally hear her. As an attorney myself, it is a six-figure loan that you take on top of college. And did you get a master's between your bachelor's and the Juris Doctor that you get? You don't have to. This is one of those times where it's quite common to skip over your bachelor's to go to your master's. But even though I became an attorney in 1998, it was a six-figure commitment then just to get your Juris Doctor or JD. It certainly is a much higher six-figure commitment now, even if you don't go to a law school like Yale or Harvard and such. I did not go to Yale or Harvard, but what can I say? I only applied to one law school that was 15 minutes away from where I worked as a paralegal. So I went to night school. I had no choice. This is what happens when you're born into welfare, which is a true statement. So, you have to work twice as hard just to get half as much. Chillmonger says, I think there is an inconsistency when Shang-Chi Banner was in human form in that video call with Wong and Carol, but in She-Hulk, he is supposed to be the Hulk. I'm wondering about that timeline. And I do think that both of us should look at that and put our own spins or takes. Is it a complete inconsistency, or does that somehow, if we look at the other projects, I have to think about that. If we look at the other Marvel movies and such, is there an inconsistency, or is it part of the timeline, but it's just kind of janky how you could make it work? Oh, I'm glad you pointed that out. That's 100% true. As I sit here now, reacting to it live. So Jennifer's head partner walks in. He wants to talk to her. He wants her to be in human form when they speak to one another, which already kind of like is a poker's tell. He's not approving of her as a superhero at all. He wants to talk to the human that he employed and the human that has worked for him all this time. So she obliges. She's not too into the superhero thing herself. He wants to have a quote unquote serious conversation with her. So again, you can tell she's about to be brought out to the Woodhouse, if you will. And then he explains, that they didn't win the case. Oh, I will note, interesting nuance. And I mentioned this in my last reaction video to episode 1. There's a bunch of open loops that they either are going to close episode per episode or should close before the 9 episodes are over. So we're already 2 episodes in. Some of the Chekhov's guns have been paid off, especially this one here, where Bruce was telling her one of the benefits of being a Hulk was that you could drink a whole bunch and really not get drunk. However, when her boss in the legalese bar tells her, I want you in human form when we have a more serious conversation, and she transforms, she falls on the floor drunk because she's already had several drinks. And she didn't care to space them out because she was in She-Hulk form the way the public wanted her. But her then boss was like, no, I want to talk to you and have a serious conversation. So she collapses. So she's drunk and she's like, oh, well, we did win the case. And he's like, no, we didn't, because apparently initially they won. And here's a nuance a lawyer would understand a little bit more, because he's like, it was declared a mistrial. GLK&H, had it declared a mistrial. And you could say that's kind of dopey, because wasn't Jen there? So wouldn't she have known whether she won the case or not? So I think just a couple extra words in that line and a layperson would understand why that's not janky in and of itself. Like, what they did was the trial was won at the time that Jennifer was in the courtroom. But then immediately afterwards, it's just what I would do if I were attorney for the defense. I've only done civil law, but I've been on both sides of the equation through the years. So if I were representing the defense and I thought I got a verdict I didn't want, my client didn't want to stand, and if it was Roxxon, they have all the money in the world, so they're like, whatever you have to do to exonerate us or to at least get the trial thrown out so we get a new trial, that we might win this next time around. They would go and make a motion. Okay, so and that motion is likely going to be on papers. It's not going to be an application that's done at the bench. And so, if this were several hours to a day later, an emergency motion could be made, to throw out the trial, to have it declared a mistrial. And so GLK&H did exactly that, and apparently Jennifer wasn't aware of it. Just because an attorney goes and tries a case, whether it's civilly or criminally, they may not be the person who handles every last aspect of it. If there's an emergency motion and the attorney assigned to the case and or the trial attorney for the case is gone, you might have the motions department handle the motions, either making them, which GLK&H did, or defending against it. Which is obviously what the district attorney's office had to do, and they lost. And you know what? As an attorney, I kind of understand not only why GLK&H did what they did, but why the court ended up declaring things a mistrial afterwards on papers, quote unquote, or via motion. Because, let's see. Let me just skip down. See, I'm on locations someplace else, so I don't have all my gear in my best way. Okay, so here's the thing. He said that GLK&H had it declared a mistrial because of the She-Hulk incident. Because Jennifer saved the lives of the jury. Okay. The jury, GLK&H argued, then became biased towards her, felt indebted to her, and so therefore they were too biased to render a neutral verdict. And the court ruled in GLK&H's favor on that separate application for that reason alone. And I have to tell you that if this were quote unquote real life and I were the judge, I'd have to do the same thing. Okay, it's not like Jennifer's a superhero in general in the background, and she just so happened to try a case that had nothing to do with the court and nothing otherwise to do with any of the parties. That might be one thing because the playing field is level enough. But once Jennifer went just before her closing arguments and saved everybody, the timing's too tight. There was no delay. There was no cooling off period. Of course, the jury is going to be super biased towards her. The pity is she might have won that case anyway, but for that. So the trial had to be thrown out, and they're going to have to start all over again. So Jennifer's like, well, excuse me, what was I supposed to do? Was I supposed to let the jury be harmed by all the falling debris and Titania having a tantrum? The boss agrees. He does sound very kindly at that moment when he reassures her that, in his personal opinion, she did the right thing. However, in his professional opinion, it cost them the case. And there's no way that she's going to be likely to retry that case herself, because, the next jury might be biased to her too because of the news. So this becomes a very, very complicated. So he said that her being a superhero now makes her a liability for the district attorney's office. Do I think that decision was fair on his part? No. I think that he should have removed her from the case. I think that he should also possibly remove her, or what lawyers call Chinese wall her, away from Roxxon, presuming I'm right about that being the client that GLK&H was defending. Yes, I think she should have been Chinese walled away from any cases having to do with that particular defendant moving forward. But for her to have completely lost her job, that doesn't necessarily square well with reality. However, two things. Number one, because reasons, we have to move the plot forward and get her to GLK&H. However, if you follow the Marvel comic book saga, that actually is a bit comic book accurate to what happened to her. She did lose her job with her employer. It did have to do with her being superhuman. At the same time, in the Marvel comic book saga, she was already part of the Avengers when this happened. Um, this was around the Dan Slott run, if I'm recalling things correctly. Um, but she did lose her job. She was also not kicked out of the Avengers in the comic book version of this, but she was kicked out of where the Avengers were staying because she just partied too hard and she was a bit too much for the Avengers to live with her, but they still wanted her to remain on the team, which she did. But those were two rejections back to back in the comic book saga. So Jen got pissed, and what does a party girl tend to do? Especially a single party girl, she goes out to the bar and she gets drunk. That's where Holden Holloway, also in the comic book saga, came to recruit her for his firm. So this is, in a way, roughly comic book accurate in the She-Hulk Attorney at Law series. So I appreciate that they did that. So let's see. So the logo goes from She-Hulk Attorney at Law to She-Hulk Attorney for Hire, which was funny. And then let's see. So we head over to her apartment or her home. Bruce leaves her a voicemail, "Hey, Buzzball." So that nickname was introduced in episode 1. It continues to play out a couple times here in episode 2. He's like, "Hey, I'm here to talk a little bit more. No gloating this time, I promise." Well, maybe a little. So they apparently did talk about this incident. Jen's a bit hungover, so maybe she spoke to him when she first came home from the bar, pretty upset, which is not unusual for people to do. They're really pissed. They're going to call their loved one their confidant. You can see just how close they both are. "Hey, Rami, what's going on?" "Oh, and Schumacher, I didn't notice you said something else." They happened around the same time. The Abomination fight links them. Yeah, you are probably right. You are probably right about that, Schumacher. What's going on, Rami? I'm glad that you came. I hope you're feeling better, man. So let's see. So, you can tell that she's upset. You can tell that she's been speaking to Bruce. They're not only close, he can relate to her a little bit more and she to him because of everything that's happened. So then you go through this montage where she's interviewing for jobs desperately. She can't get anything because everyone's basically saying that her being a superhero is a liability for them. I guess I could see this if they were too worried about having their trials thrown out as mistrials over and over again. Although, quite frankly, I think that, again, in real life as an attorney myself, the way they could have worked around this was to give it a good year for things to cool off before they sent her into court to do anything other than maybe court conferences. She-Hulk could have covered court conferences, and that's most of what you do. I think there's only a very tiny amount of cases criminally or civilly in America that get tried from year to year. So trial work isn't really, unless she was just predominantly a trial attorney, I don't see why other folks wouldn't have hired her in real life. They might have hired her for work otherwise stood up for itself. I didn't get the impression she was a first year with no experience. She was saying, "I just got my own office" in episode 1. Sometimes attorneys, when they're first years, this happened to me at one firm I worked at, I didn't get an office for a while. I had to go work out in the cubicle with a lot of other first years and staff. It really depends upon the firm that you're working for or with. You don't always get an office, and you don't tend to get a corner office unless you're a partner. I'm going to talk about this later when we talk about She-Hulk getting her own office at GLK&H, okay? Because what they did for her there definitely is a poker's tell about the amount of confidence that they have in her, and the fact that if she's not a partner off the jump once she gets to GLK&H, they're forecasting that she's going to be, because in law offices, you don't get a corner office unless you are a partner, an equity partner, meaning you share in the equity of the firm. Not all partners do, or you're considered a rainmaker partner, which is what they might have. One of the many reasons why Holden Holloway ended up hiring Jennifer Walters. And that was very smart on him. If you want me to paint Holden Holloway as making poor business decisions in this episode, I will tell you no, and I will give you the real attorney reason as to why. Oh, thank you, Chillmonger. You deserved an office and to choose your paralegal. Do you know? I never got a choice with my paralegals, but they were all really good. I have to say. I did end up getting an office with windows for sure, so that made me happy. But when I first started off at the first place that I worked for, there were over 300 attorneys, and they were still buying or leasing more space in the building that they were in. They didn't have the entire building yet. So, yeah, I would say for almost my first year as a first year associate, I did not have an office. I actually worked in a tight little cubicle, which was not fun. But you know what? I think I was out of there by the time it was a year. Because if you're any good as a litigator, other attorneys, including partners and hiring partners, see you in the courtroom all the time. Your work ends up speaking for itself. I never had to look for work or better opportunities. After the first year or so, they definitely found me. So I can't really complain. I always had my own office afterwards. There was one place that I didn't have an office with windows for a while. So I was kind of like in a box, which kind of freaked me out because I'm a little claustrophobic. But I ended up getting cherry picked by other firms. The longest I was ever at a firm was about 4 years because I constantly kept getting more and more high profile clientele, like Rockefeller Center. Rockefeller Center for 4 years straight. The biggest case I ever had with that was worth 23.5 million in terms of exposure, and I was on that case for 4 years. NBC was one of the opponents. New York Telephone, which was a forerunner to Verizon, was another opponent. That 4-year deal got me even better and better positions along the way. But I think at the next two firms I worked at, I was only there for maybe 2 years at a time because I kept getting offered better and better deals. So, which would have happened to Jennifer anyway. Kind of what happens to her with her going from the district attorney's office to move over to the private sector. Private sector typically pays better, whether we're talking about civil or criminal. Also, if you guys are curious, no matter what state you're in, private sector always pays better salary. It may or may not have better benefits and pensions than district attorney's offices do. So a lot of attorneys will work at a DA's office until they qualify to max out with their pension and their benefits. And then it's like, unless they're totally in love with what they're doing, they immediately go over to the private sector because it's much better pay and usually benefits, but they've already got a full pension from the DA's office. But again, I never did criminal work. I was always a civil attorney. Let's see. So, she has a hard run getting hired. You have this whole montage where she just can't seem to keep, to be hired. But her friend Nikki's helping her now. I don't know about you, Chill, but I found quite a few Easter eggs on the screen where Jennifer was taking a break from the job search, clearly the serious job search, and she was looking for instead, other jobs that weren't in the law to kind of start over. Because I think Jennifer clearly got the idea that unless something broke for her anytime soon, she was probably not going to be a lawyer anymore. So, like, what could she do so that she could continue to work? Hey, Anthony Starr, what's going on? Really insightful lawyer stuff there. Thank you. Oh, yes, I will have. By the way, you guys, jumping ahead to when she was with Emil Blonsky, or just before she took on his case, when Holden Holloway said, the first case I want you to take on is Emil Blonsky. And she was trying to demur given the facts and circumstances. I called it. The trailers didn't show it, but I do have a video on I think you might have seen it already, Anthony and Chill and Rami, but that video was called She-Hulk's Conflict of Interest. Holden Holloway wasn't troubled by her saying, well, there might be a conflict of interest given the fact that the Abomination tried to kill my cousin. I talked about why Holden Holloway was very blithe about it. And it's not because he's being a slimy lawyer. It's very nuanced. If you work in the legal field in any capacity, you tend to go, oh, well, yes, there is a way to work around it as long as all parties are comfortable. The way Jennifer handled it in the aftermath of what Holden Holloway showed her in terms of the documentation that Emil signed, her going and talking to her cousin and getting his approval, that's what she should have done as a professional, even if they weren't related, even if they weren't close. So I do love how this show so far is handling legal issues, the lawyer life, partners versus associates, and then working private sector to public sector. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. I love how the show handled this. This is so far very well written from an attorney's perspective, for sure. So it's here's where a whole bunch of Easter eggs pop out. And oh my God, Anthony, if you didn't see the video that I did recently about Iron Man possibly returning, the first Easter egg that jumped out at the screen where Jennifer's taking a break from looking for legal work, on the right-hand sidebar, red, you can't miss it. It talked about Iron Man. And I'm telling you, they're not going to keep dropping all of these Iron Man hints from video to video, or episode to episode, I should say, without them paying that off. So if you haven't seen that video that I just published to my channel like a day or so ago, you need to see it, because I walk through all the different Easter eggs and nuances that showed up in episode 1 that really is saying that Iron Man is now going to return to the MCU, which he needs to. And I even discussed why in that video he really kind of needs to, or you really have a hard time getting to Avengers, Kang Dynasty, and Avengers Secret Wars without an Iron Man. I just don't. No. So they're definitely giving you a trail of breadcrumbs or Easter eggs. This is now 2 episodes in a row where they do it with Iron Man. They're not being sparing about this. Okay, so let's see. There's also related articles that are important, like man fights with metal claws in bar brawl. Sound like Wolverine, anybody? I think that they've already, because of Miss Marvel, they've already kind of revealed that, mutants are a thing in the MCU, Earth 616 version in the MCU. So the man fighting with iron claws in a bar brawl is totally Wolverine. So I'm so excited, because that's your first little poker's tell that they're going to bring him in slowly but surely, which they need to. Again, how do you get to Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars without Avengers and X-Men? Kang is way, way, way too powerful for just the Avengers alone. Never going to happen. They got away with it with Thanos, but Thanos was way less brutal. We'll check it out. Yay, thank you. Okay, so then the other Easter egg, so there's like 3 main ones at least. There also a related article said, why is there a giant statue of a man sticking out of the ocean? Hello, Tiamut. So that's them now slowly tying in what happened in the Eternals into Earth 616 slash MCU. I know some Marvel theorists were saying earlier, and I don't blame them, this could have totally been a possibility, that what happened with the Eternals is not going down in Earth 616 because of Tiamut. No one's mentioning it. You don't have influencers taking pictures with it and all those sorts of things. I think Eric Boss from New Rockstars was talking about this extensively, and how, something like Tiamut coming up out of the ocean would definitely affect the Earth. How could it not be noticed? So this was addressed in this little Easter egg. There is some hubbub going on about what is this statue. So I love how they're slowly cinching everything in and tying it together. How excited are you guys about the Wolverine and Iron Man Easter eggs, though? I can't even begin to tell you. And they're still doing it in episode 2. This is great. So the main article that Jen has pulled up is 10 offbeat jobs for a fresh start, since it's clear that at this point, after several days in her job search, things might not work out for her given all of the stuff that's going on. It's authored by Kyle Wendt. I want to say, again, this is a fresh reaction. I'm going to have to go and research it. Kyle Wendt, I think, is somehow attached to the She-Hulk comic. Chillmonger says, I think you're reaching, those are Thanksgiving eggs. Ooh, I don't know. They might be Thanksgiving eggs about how far out it's going to take for those to play out, to be fair. So I think I will adopt your Thanksgiving eggs observation, Chill. You may be right, and so may I. The man with metal claws in the brawl. How is that not Wolverine? Come on. And Tiamat, that's definitely Tiamat. I do think that all of this stuff slowly but surely is going to tie together. So at the top, you should see that the things that She-Hulk was looking into, the topics were fun, movies, cars, Norse mythology, hello Thor, Avengers, because she's going to join them down the road, and her cousin was in the Avengers, so of course, and insanity, which is what's currently highlighted, because as you could see from all of the bottles of wine and all the different various types of takeout, Jen's been on, a long binge in terms of trying to get another job. And it's not been working out. So she's currently looking at taking on the position of a Swiss village mascot. So Nikki's like, enough of this. This is dumb. And poor Jen's like, I'm sad and I'm lonely. But then she's called to a family dinner. And so she's over at the parents' home. I like how Jen's at the front door. She's got like a green jacket. She's got a green scarf on, very She-Hulkish. She's carrying a pie, which denotes her as being a thoughtful daughter. Yes, she's going over someone's house for dinner, but this is her parents' house. So it's showing how thoughtful she is, because even then she's still bringing a hostess gift. She's thoughtful. A lot of the rest of her family's pretty thoughtless. So I thought that was a nice juxtaposition. Morris, her father, who in the comic books is very loving and doting too, for quite a time, is, the same here in the MCU. So you've got that parallel from the Marvel comic book saga. So Morris, her dad, greets her at the door, but like every mother, as she comes in with the pie, the mother thanks her for her kindness, but then immediately launches into how sugar like this is bad for her daughter's waistline. Meanwhile, Jennifer Walters is hardly thick, especially when she's not in She-Hulk form, but even then. So that's kind of ridiculous, but that's a total mom thing. Let's see. Sorry, guys, my text's a little bit different because I'm out and about for this one. So then we have... Morris reassures his daughter as he walks her to the dinner table. Don't worry about being embarrassed now about losing your job. I already told everybody about it. I said not to bring it up. Basically you're here to enjoy yourself, so sit down. And she's not seated for more than 60 seconds. And I guess her cousin Chad is like, so you got sacked, and he's being scolded for it. So how thoughtless is he? But they make him even better. Remember how Chad was referred to in the car ride just before the Sicarian spaceship came up in episode 1 of She-Hulk. And Bruce, of course, he's a brilliant guy. He's giving his cousin praise, Jennifer praise, for being pretty smart herself with the Cheetos and chopsticks. And then they make reference to another genius in the family, who is Chad. So now we're introduced to Chad here, but clearly this is irony, because Chad's dressed like he's a complete dope. He's behaving like a complete dope. And she isn't seated for more than a minute or two, and he's already seeking praise from everybody else, completely thoughtless. His cousin loses her job. She's unemployed. He's not only employed, he just got a promotion as the manager of Best Buy. Now, I don't want to put down anybody who works in retail. My mother works in retail. She's worked in retail for decades. Getting elevated to management, yes, these big companies do tend to give you decent pay and benefits, especially once you're a manager. But the whole point is, number one, she's a lawyer. He clearly isn't. Number two, have a little bit of taste there in your mouth, more than in your mouth there, Chad. Poor girl. So she's all mortified, and everyone's scolding him like a 9-year-old, but he's behaving like a 9-year-old, so he deserves it. totally tone deaf. But, not before they're all clapping for him because he got his promotion. And then Chad's father has to show that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree by saying, employed and promoted, right? But, just when you sit there and you think that somebody isn't likely to do this in real life, in some families you'd be right, and in other families, totally wrong. So maybe Chad's dad was sick and tired, let's say, looking at the family politics. Um, uh, Chillmonger, whatever have you managed? I know, really. you know, so poor Chad's dad is probably so sick and tired of Morris and his wife talking endlessly about their daughter, the lawyer, and now this is him and his progeny's chance to shine. And they're taking their shot whether anybody else likes it or not, which can be reflective of a lot of family politics. So Jen's face is showing aggravation, but she's under control. Then mom talks about there being a nice man, Yusuf, who also wants to be a superhero. So Jen presumes too much, apparently. She's like, don't set me up with anybody. And the mother's like, oh, I wouldn't dare. He's too young for you, which immediately is like, what am I, an old spinster? But some moms do that. So now she's unemployed and she's not married. So it's like dig and dig. She's doing the whole mom thing about all the disappointments. And instead, she's showing more concern for Yusuf by saying, hey, you should, call him because he wants some pointers about how to be a superhero. And she's also just basically pimping her daughter out. As kind of like, a brain trust. So, her daughter's useful for information. So that gets the mother some street cred too with her barista, I guess. Goodness gracious. And then she goes, I told him that my daughter is a superhero. He hadn't heard of you. So clearly she's not like Titania level influencer yet, but it's just another put down or dig that a lot of moms can do. Now I say moms, I'm sure that other parents, can do it too. Dads and parents can do that too. But it is a typical classic mom trope. I'm not going to throw myself under the bus by telling you whether or not my mom's done this. Sometimes, not always. But anyway, okay, so mom's face says it all. Oh no, Morris's face says it all. This happens all the time. This is a family dynamic, and he's really pissed off about it. So meanwhile, Chad is now greedily shoveling food into his mouth from a plate like a 9-year-old would. Morris then sits there and asks his daughter about whether Hawkeye goes and picks up his arrows and stuff like that after he shot them. This is hysterical in two different ways. Number one, because she's been a superhuman for all of a second. How does she know what Hawkeye does? Right? Wouldn't that question be better put to Bruce? But Bruce isn't there. Bruce was in the Avengers with Hawkeye. That'd be kind of colorful to ask Bruce about it because he's gone into battle with Hawkeye. She's been a superhero for a New York minute. And he's already thinking that somehow she's tapped into, the general lexicon and collective, the mental collective of all superheroes, which is just funny. But if you've ever been a lawyer, there's another layer or nuance to this. So and I've talked to a lot of the attorneys that I've gone to law school with for I went 4 years at night. So a lot of the friends that I had were evening students and not day students, but some were. And no matter who I spoke to, it's the same thing. The minute you become an attorney, people come romping up to you, not just for free legal advice, that's one thing, but they presume you know everything now about the law. You just finished, 3, if not 4 years of law school. You just took the bar exam, which is a 2-day extravaganza, folks. Multi-state is just 1 day, and then your particular state is a second day. This is 8 hours a day of taking exams. So, yeah, you know quite a bit, but you don't know everything. You didn't tap into the whole mental lexicon and the mental collective out there for every area of law and everything, every nuance, every legal nuance. But people, my mother, this I'll throw her under the bus for. She's like, you're a lawyer now. You must know this. Can you answer this question? It's like, no, I don't know every last thing just because I'm a lawyer. So, Jennifer just became superhuman and suddenly she's supposed to know everything about every superhuman that's out there. That is so perfect. And then, of course, it's not enough that Chad's dad has just praised up Chad like he's a 9-month-old that just went to the potty. Everybody clapped for him, at the expense of poor Jennifer. But now it's yet another put down. His girlfriend, I guess, because he refers to the lady as Melanie and not mom or anything like that, or aunt. Melanie's a hairdresser, so your hair is all fuzzy. And she's like, yeah, let's make you look more like She-Hulk, which is a put down, number one, because like poor Jennifer isn't attractive enough for these people, and they just went and moonwalked all over her because of Chad. But now she doesn't look pretty enough, or she needs to look more like the superhero. And meanwhile, she's like, I'm my own person, I'm a lawyer, I want to be successful on my own rights. And meanwhile, it's like, let's do something with this hair. Could we do something with this hair? Oh my God, such a family thing, such a family dynamic thing. It is so pitch perfect. And so everyone's going on and on and on. And, the camera's on her, trying so hard to control herself. So her dad, Morris, who again is a big champion and confidant of her at points in the comic book saga, in the MCU now, he pulls her aside into his like man cave so that she could have a breather from it all. And he's just checking in with her to make sure that she's okay. Typically, there's always somebody in the family who will go play savior and like save your bacon and kind of let you chill. So he's doing it. And he's like, how are you really feeling about all of this? And she's like, I got fired for saving people and now I can't get another job because of it. That's just so pitch perfect, summarizes where she's at right now. It's very frustrating. She didn't choose being a superhero. She doesn't want to lean in it full time. And it seems like practically everyone does, except for anybody who can give her a job and benefits. And even though this is like fantasy world, it's very real life that she's concerned about. How am I going to support myself as a single woman? This comes up later when she's back in the bar and talking to, or when she's back talking to Nikki and says, should I even go and be an Avenger? Because after all, do they pay me? Are they paid? Do they get benefits? If you saw Captain in the Winter Soldier, oh no, Falcon in the Winter Soldier, it's now Captain in the Winter Soldier. But if you saw Falcon in the Winter Soldier, poor Falcon cannot get a loan to even save his family's boat. And he's like, I fought in the Battle of Earth. You can't throw me a bone. I have no value. I have a value saving your life, but I have no monetary value. There were so many things about Falcon and the Winter Soldier that I thought were so well nuanced. If we have a big enough and long enough break, I want to go back now that I have a channel for this sort of thing and give you my breakdowns and my look backs at that. And then, of course, we do have Captain America for New World Order, and I'll give you my thoughts about that. So Morris reassures her that it's okay, and it's not the first time they've ever had to deal with, a Hulk. There's a Hulk in the family, and he at least gives her credit and says, "And you didn't destroy a city, because Bruce did during his fight with the Abomination," which again gets referenced later. So Jen says, one weight has been lifted because I've been outed as a superhuman. But another weight is on me because now I have to live an everyday life, even though I'm a superhero. Black, green, no handouts. Dude, I'm telling you, Killmonger, that's very aptly put. It definitely is. And it does introduce enough of an element of real world into this to make it a more compelling story. Okay, so, Morris is like, the thing that you were dreading happened, but look, you're still standing, and now you get to keep moving on, which is true. So she's back at the Legalese bar. She's drinking alone. No one's cheering for She-Hulk anymore. She has one drink. She's asked if she wants another, and she's like, I'm balling on a budget now. Of course, she has no job. And she doesn't know how her prospects are going to get any better. So that's when Holden Holloway walks in. And like I said earlier, for those of you who weren't here earlier, this is a bit comic book accurate how things happen. When she's down on the balls of her butt and she's, in the comic books, the Avengers are like, you can stay on the team, but you can't live with us. And she loses her day job there as well, though obviously for somewhat different reasons. She's sitting in the bar drinking like a single person who likes to go out does. She's drowning her sorrow. She feels sorry for herself and she's alone. But in the comic book, this was when Holden Holloway also came to her and gave her a job offer. So I love how they kind of keep enough of a parallel going between the comic book saga, whether you love the Dan Slott run or not. And because Superhuman Law was a big thing. I loved how Dan Slott kind of did his best to do right by this character instead of constantly doing her dirty. There's another video on my channel. I put the playlist down below. It's the first comment pinned on the live, and I'll make sure that it's pinned on the replay as well. That's my playlist with all of my current She-Hulk videos in it. And I talk about how the current Disney Plus series is definitely an upgrade and does the character more justice than some of the things that they did with her in the run leading up to Dan Slott's run. Because he really did try to work more of attorney life and superhuman law into things. That's how we got her working for and with the Living Tribunal and the Magistrati, which of course you're going to get separate videos on that with the lawyer's perspective on it. Because I thought, considering the fact that it's mostly lay people reading those comic books and it's lay people writing them, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do not think that Dan Slott was a lawyer. But he might have had lawyers in his family, or at least tried to do some research as he worked in his storytelling, because it felt more elevated, okay? But then when Dan Slott left, they turned her into a freaking bounty hunter, running around on a bike and scantily clad again, so whatever. Poor She-Hulk. Anyway, he comes into the bar and he offers to buy her a drink, and then he says he wants to offer her a job, and of course, she's thinking, you're kidding. You're being sarcastic. I won the trial against you. Then you file for a mistrial and you get it. So they haven't won at that point with respect to that case. Just for a legal nuance, they have to try the case all over again. Okay. It's not like their client got off. They just got a brief reprieve, and now they have to pay for a whole nother trial. And again, if it's Roxxon, they don't care. But he says, no, I never joke. And he deadpans. And to be fair, if I'm recalling this correctly, that's also rather comic book accurate. Holden Holloway is a bit more of a straight man to her comedic edge. And it does look like that's happening here too, which is fine. I like the balance, and it's very comic book accurate. I was a goofball as a lawyer. I do have to tell you, when I was out in the court system more, when my partner used to walk into my office, I had my own mini fridge. I had to bring it in. I had Pikachu and all sorts of Marvel stuff around me because it made me happy. And I didn't just want to be stuck up lawyer in a suit all day long. Some people need their reprieve in other ways. Some lawyers golf. Others are into watching sports. I don't golf. And I mean, I'm not like Go Sports, but I'm not the biggest sports person. So, I mean, for me, Marvel and Pokemon and stuff, I loved it. So I had this stuff all over my office. And just as a quick aside, if I had other attorneys from my own office or from other offices or clients walk in and they didn't go up to Pikachu and at least acknowledge Pikachu, because there was a big stuffed Pikachu in my office. If they pretended that Pikachu wasn't even there, I was like, you're not part of my posse. There's no way. And a lot of them weren't, but that's okay. Let's see. Rami says, yay, a fellow Poke fan as well. Yeah, I'm not. I will admit to you that I was not as crazy into Pokemon as I was Marvel. Marvel I've been a fan of since 1986. And Pokemon I think I got into closer to 2000, 2001. And of course, I love Pikachu because he's adorable, but without getting too far astray, like that was my thing. Once I had my own office and stuff like that, I put my own stuff out. I definitely put my own stuff out. And, if people didn't jive with it, they didn't. But I said, I'm going to be my own person. Because according to the American Bar Association, most attorneys work between 60 to 80 hours a week. And that's not even including commutation time. So if I'm going to be at work that much, I may as well be surrounded by things that I love. I mean, of course, there's pictures of my family and stuff in there too, duh. But all right, so So Holden Holloway is very much the straight man to her comedy, and it looks like that's how it's going to play out here as well. So he buys her a drink, he offers her a job, he tells her he never jokes around. He said, Miss Walters, you laid out a winning case against us. Before I had it declared as a mistrial, of course. It's no easy feat to win against GLK&H. So I would like you to come work for us. I like this for two separate reasons. Number one, because it is a bit comic book accurate. He respected her work and wanted to hire her, but he also liked the fact that she was a superhuman, okay? But in real life, and I said this before, so I'll say it again for anybody who's just joining us now. Being a litigator, I never had to look for work. Jobs dropped in my lap because people would see you, including hiring partners, in the courtrooms all day long, whether you're trying a case, whether you're on conference calls, mediator, arbitrator, anything, emergency hearings. So you never had to interview for a job as a litigator. People would see you, they would know that the judges respected you. I don't want to say I won all the time, but I won a lot. And I won some pretty high profile civil stuff, again, for clientele like Rockefeller Center. The Arizona Beverage brand, I would oversee trials and stuff like that for them. So, I never had to look for work. So, in a sense, why Holden is hiring her separate and parallel from her being a superhuman is something that squares with reality. So, I love that. Chillmonger says sounds like you won more than Ash Ketchum. And Anthony Starr says Boss Holloway was really convincing. I like him. Again, I really think that you have to really reach for Marvel Studios in terms of like their choices not being dead on for stuff. Even in some cases, when they announced certain actors portraying characters, I was like, how's that going to work? But then it totally would. So far, so good. You guys let me know both live and on the replay down below who your favorite characterizations are, or if you think, you know what, Stacey, they've been off a couple of times, but I don't think so. I really don't think so. So this is very accurate to what happens in terms of litigation, the industry, both civil and criminal. Work tends to find you if you're any good. You really shouldn't. I don't even remember the statistic. This is also largely true outside of the legal field. But like usually networking and or your presence in your industry is going to get you more jobs than job searches. Job searches, I think, are only, especially for litigators, but I think even outside of it, job searches, it's not like they can't work out, but like unless you're a beginner in your field and you're going for a beginner position, after that, at least in the legal world, I know for a fact because I've lived it since 1998, you shouldn't have to look for work again. It finds you. So I like that. But also, of course, Holden has two additional reasons for hiring her. So Jennifer says, you got me fired. Now you want to hire me. You can't blame her for having that reaction. And he's like, you'd be the head of a new division. Yes. So he's like, take some time because he knows he's being human. She lost her job. People are pissed. Nobody likes that. So he's like, take some time. And she's like, I accept, because she's just, please hire me. No one else will. Plus, GLK&H is what we often will call a top tier or a top shelf attorney, or I'm sorry, a top shelf law firm. Another phrase for it is a white shoe law firm. This is not only the private sector. She'd be going from public to private sector. And as I said before, the benefits will probably be there. The pension might not be as good, but the pay always is better. So she knows she's not only going to get a job now and she's going to continue to be a lawyer, which is what she wanted, but she's going to make more money. So she's like, I'm not stupid. I accept. You don't have to chat me up. I don't need time. And that felt pretty real too, to be honest with you. So she says, I will only do it if I can hire my own paralegal, non-negotiable. This is also very real life. People have done this. I want to take my staff with me. We're a unit. We work better. I don't want to deal with office drama. However, Holden's reaction is also very typical too. It's like, okay, whatever. I really don't care who your paralegal is. I just care about the finished product. That's true too. That's industry accurate as well. It is actually not as unusual as you think for people to say, if you do hire me, these are my conditions. I do want my staff to come with me. Staff's typically paralegal or a law clerk. If it's a really big firm, you might also want to take, what do they call a case manager with you as well. So she's very excited. She's showing up at GLK and H in a pantsuit. She's carrying a great attaché case. She strides up to the door very confidently, and she instead of she can't get in right because she pushes on it when she should pull on it to get in. And yes, it's comedy, but it's also very real life. You're trying to make a good impression. You're coming in strong, and you end up winding up in the broom closet instead of the reception area or something embarrassing like that. Holloway's there. He's thrilled to have her on the team. It's an exciting time at GLK&H. More and more eccentric superhumans. Notice how he says superhumans and not superheroes. I think that this is an important nuance because obviously not every, superhuman is a superhero. But notice how he's not using that term because if this follows more like the comic book run, they're going to be doing plaintiff and defense work. And he is acknowledging to her up front, they're not always going to represent the good guy. This happened when in the comic book run, when she represented Eros or Star Fox, and Star Fox has been introduced in the Eternals and the cutscene in the Eternals movie. But so she's not always going to represent the good guy, and we're putting the abomination aside as we say this. So like any good partner, managing partner, founding partner, Holden Holloway, and this is the Holloway in GLK&H, right? He said, we just started a superhuman law division, and I want you, the She-Hulk, to be the head of it. This is also smart. Like in real life, if you see a new type of law come out, like cryptocurrency, right? Or when marijuana was, increasingly made legal, the CBD industry and stuff like that, there could be entire new wings or divisions at a law firm, especially in the private sector, that is created in order to accommodate this new type of law. So this is very industry specific. It squares well with reality as well. If you suddenly had superheroes or superhumans in real life along with us, you would have a lot of white collar attorneys. Hey, honey, what's going on? This is my husband coming down. It's our 15th anniversary. So I'm going to be wrapping up in just a minute. And I'll have to do a part 2 to this because, we're away. You guys can see I'm not in my normal. This is not my house. So I'm going to be wrapping up in just a minute. But let me at least get you to the point where she is talking to Emil. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Rami. I appreciate it. But let me get you to the point where he puts to her what her first case is going to be. Hey, thank you, Kenneth. I really appreciate it. Yeah, 15 years. We dated way longer than that, but we're married 15 years today. So is this not dedication? I didn't even do my hair. I just came running down out of my hotel room. And I had to go into a hallway where no music was playing because then I would get a content strike. So I know Chillmonger is going to laugh because that is a consideration when you do these live streams. You don't want a content strike. But I will say that She-Hulk, Jennifer, is thrown because she's like, I thought I was coming to work for you as Jennifer Walters, which technically she is. But he's not wrong about this. This doesn't make him a sleazy attorney. She's supposed to head the superhuman division. She needs to really be a superhuman when she's doing all or most of that work. In the comic book run, GLK&H had multiple locations, but they also had entire suites that were dedicated to making their superhuman clients, and Chill says exactly, they had entire like suites and areas and rooms that were set up to make their clientele feel safe, feel comfortable. So they could even have separate ecosystems. This is smart lawyering and this is smart marketing. Client relations are important because a lot of good counsel get their work through referrals more than any other way, believe it or not. And there's so many constraints, at least in the real world, on how you can advertise. And I did a separate video breaking down the advertisement trailer that they did because I thought that was very clever, how they did it. And it did feel industry realistic. But you want to make sure that your clientele feels comfortable. So it's not just the ecosystems and like giving them the food or the treats that they might like and making them physically comfortable. Holden's right. She does have to be She-Hulk in order to make them feel emotionally comfortable. If you're an Uncanny X-Men fan or an X-Men fan like me, you know that one of the things about the X-Men was that they were always treated like outcasts. They were always treated like others. A lot of the human race didn't love them, which is why they ended up, disembarking for Krakoa later on. But the whole point is Holden's right. They need to feel like they're being represented by one of us. So Jennifer as the human is not as attractive to them. And I don't mean romantically, I mean intellectually and emotionally. If they're going to have somebody represent them, it really should be an attorney who is one of us. So he's right, even though she's taken a little bit aback. So he's like, I want you to transform right now. So when she does, of course, you see all the humans freaking out about her. People are bumping into carts and crashing into walls. And then you have the comic book fanboy with his office laden with comic books, but even he still looks like he doesn't believe what he's seeing. And then you have the one, I guess it's going to be a paralegal, but it could be a female attorney too. Let me not presume too much, who's in one of the file rooms and she's giving her a dirty look. Like, what the hell is this? So it definitely sets up the dichotomy that they do have a certain clientele that they are going to service and that they're going to make feel comfortable. And she has to do that. And Holden Holloway's right. But she's going to end up paying the price in terms of the office politics, right? So, Steve, where are you at, baby? All right, I'll keep doing this till he comes back. So he says, we are the first top tier law firm to launch an entire division dedicated to superhuman law. First to the market or first to the table with a solid offer wins in business. This is really smart marketing on behalf of Holden Holloway, who's a name partner and an equity partner. So of course he's got a vested interest in this. But again, having been an attorney for so long and having worked for so many different firms, mostly in the private, all of them in the private sector, let me not be wrong. This is smart of him to do this, to launch that division so quickly so that he can grab up more market share before other competitors will, because they will. All right, so she breaks the fourth wall again. She says, okay, is this why they hired me? This sucks. Okay, I am totally qualified, but now everyone around here is always going to think that this is the only reason why I got the job. It's so unfair. I should be able to enjoy the fact that I just got an amazing new job, and I can't. She's right about that. This can often happen with office politics. If you're a legacy and you got hired by someone who's a relative, whether it's a closer distance relative, I should say, there's often a bunch of knives in your back. And you know what? Sometimes it's not nepotism. You really did excel in school. You did really well. Maybe you did well in law before you got hired. It's not always first years that just get hired as a legacy. But when you're a legacy, it's a pain in the butt because people will always wonder, were you hired because of who you were or who you were related to, or were you hired on your own merits? So this does play out in the legal world quite a bit. And so now what else do you have? It kind of plays out a different way. She's not related to Holden Holloway, but he's bringing her in because she's a superhuman. And now it's always going to be the question, is Jennifer good enough on her own merits, whether she was She-Hulk or not. She's always got to contend with that. Kenneth Smith asks, do you think they will deal with the Sokovia Accords? Of course. Of course. And I'm trying to find online, there's like a full version of the Sokovia Accords, but it seems like a limp handshake. So I wonder if they're going to go back and, like, as they say, retcon it to make it a longer, more detailed document. But I will definitely check. Okay, guys, I'm going to do a part 2 to this here, because honestly, I do want to go out to breakfast with my husband. It is our 15th wedding anniversary, and we are away. So thank you so much for being here. I will go live later on today. And because there's a lot more to not only break down, but honestly, still, there's a lot of extra layering in terms of the legal field and legal practice that I can't wait to comment on. So I would have done this all in one shot, but it is what it is today. I will talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for showing up. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this out. Make sure you give this a thumbs up. All those things send positive signals so a little small fried channel like me can get out there in the algorithm more. Comment, let me know what you thought. Let me know what Easter eggs you saw. Make sure you see my Iron Man's coming back video, because I'm telling you, this is the second episode. They're layering in more Easter eggs. I agree with Chillmonger. They're like Thanksgiving eggs. There's going to be a little bit of time lapse before we get our payoff, but it's coming, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Kenneth says, go have fun and best wishes. Anthony says, cheers. Yay.